Hi there, I'm Simon Wilson from the Spinoff, and we are going to talk today about social enterprise. I'm joined by four people who are closely involved in social enterprise in different ways. Starting on my far left, Alex Hannant, who is the Chief Executive of Ākina, who are a social enterprise facilitator, entrepreneur, make it happen organisation. Next to him is Lisa King, the founder of Eat My Lunch, a social enterprise that operates on the BOGO principle, buy one, give one. On my right, Michelle Sharp is the CEO of Kilmarnock Enterprises in Christchurch. This is a social enterprise company that employs and supports people with intellectual disabilities. And on my far right, Nick Wells, who is the Hua Rangapu Whakarai, which you may know as Chief Executive Partner at the law firm Chapman Tripp.
Kia ora.
Kia ora. Okay, so we're going to talk about different forms of social enterprise. We're going to talk about what you guys do, the problems you face, the aspirations you have for the sector, the big political questions that surround it, all those things. And we'll run this as a conversation, so do feel free to talk over each other at any stage and interrupt and disagree, or clap wildly if you think someone's said something splendid. Perhaps, Michelle, we could start with you. Kilmarnock, you've been going for a very long time, much longer than the term social enterprise has existed. Now, perhaps you could tell us how you operate.
Yes, we have been running for 60 years, so quite a long time. In fact, this year is our 60th anniversary. Right. In terms of what Kilmarnock does, we provide a real exciting and tangible pathway for school leavers with disabilities, intellectual disabilities in particular. And we do that through two ways. As an employer, so we currently have 85 people with disabilities working at Kilmarnock, and we are part of their employment journey. So that very much they come to us from school, they gain the skills, the confidence they need, and then we help them pursue careers outside of Kilmarnock thereafter. Very excitingly, this year we have just launched the Kilmarnock Academy, which is a further option for school leavers if they want to actually go and do further education. So currently we have a cohort of about 6 employees who are doing the NZQA qualifications, right, which is very exciting for them, given that a lot of them left school without any formal qualification.
And how big is the operation overall?
In terms of people, we are probably about 100, with another 20 or so casual workers when we have high demand of work. So that kind of level, yeah.
So this is 100 people with intellectual disabilities working through Kilmarnock?
Not everybody with an intellectual disability, okay. Probably about 85.
Okay,
yeah.
Right,
so.
Right. Lisa, that's a very different kind of model from what you operate with Eat My Lunch, perhaps, and of course you haven't been going 60 years yet.
No.
Very much younger. Perhaps you could tell us.
Yeah, so we just celebrated our second birthday a couple of months ago, and Eat My Lunch is set up as a company. So we're a food delivery company where people order their lunches online to have fresh, healthy lunches delivered to them at work. And for every lunch they buy, a lunch is also given to a Kiwi kid in a low decile school who would otherwise go without.
Now, we're actually sitting in your centre of your operations here. It's the middle of the day, but this morning there were a lot of people here and a lot of lunches being made. How many lunches got made this morning?
So every day we give around 1,670 lunches to kids in 48 schools in Auckland, Hamilton and Wellington. And that's on the give side, and then what people buy varies every day, but today I think there was just under 1,000 of those made as well.
Right, right, okay. So those are two different models. There's a model there, buy one, give one, and then there's the employed staff, so the actual employment itself is the purpose of the social enterprise. Yours is what you give free, that's the purpose of it, and enabling people to come through that. Alex, those are two different models. Are there other models of social enterprise?
Yeah, I mean, we largely sort of see 3 or 4 core models, and there's variations on all of them. But the first one would be that you have a business which creates profit, which enables you to then fund the delivery of other services or products.
And that's Eat My Lunch.
Yeah, and the buy one, give one is a kind of sophisticated model there where it's not making money over here to maybe give something which is quite unrelated over there. It's actually, there's an integrity between the product and service. The second model would be where the impact is as a result of the people working within the enterprise, very much like Kilmarnock. Another example would be something like Pomegranate Kitchen, a startup in Wellington, who are also a catering social enterprise, but in that case it's around providing employment, integration, language training, livelihoods to former refugees who use their strengths to create food of Middle Eastern cuisine, and then that's sold. And then the third bucket is where the impact is actually as a result of the direct service. So there's an innovation which is actually overcoming a market failure or just simply doing something different in a better way.
So an example of that
would be maybe ThoughtWired, which are a tech company which actually develops software to enable people with profound disabilities, locked-in syndrome, to actually use computers with their thoughts. But they're also developing that in a way where that technology will be accessible to many rather than being something which is elite or exclusive. Very much driven about trying to solve that problem rather than maximise the profit.
And does that take us to part of a core definition of what social enterprise is, driven to solve that problem rather than maximise profit? Is that what it is?
Yeah, I mean, I always say it's exactly what it says on the can, right? It's an enterprise, so it has to be commercial, it has to be viable, it has to stand on its own 2 feet. But that is in service to a social and environmental mission. Yeah, so it's as simple as that. Now, I mean, the thing is, there's a huge amount of diversity. And in some ways, rather than a thing, it's better to understand social enterprise as an approach. So charities use social enterprise models. Businesses might, focus on all their commercial expertise on changing something, around, an environmental or social agenda. So it's not so much a core identity, it's more an approach which any number of organisations can do to sustain themselves and deliver a change in the world.
So the question of the relationship between charity and social enterprise is quite an important one, I think, isn't it? That being able to distinguish the two?
Yeah, I mean, I think...
Or am I seeing that wrong?
Well, no, I think the main is mission first. Right, so like charities exist to deliver a social mission,
yes,
a charitable purpose. Social enterprises exist to deliver a social mission. But the key thing about social enterprise is that it delivers that through a commercial model, generally the trading of goods and services. But as I say, charities can also be social enterprises. So it's not really about this identity. It's more about how do you get your resource in order to deliver your mission.
Kilmarnock started life as a charity. Am I right about that?
Yeah, very much so. And our changing point was really about 7 years ago when we lost the Anzac Poppy contract.
Right.
So before that, we really operated very much with a charity mentality. We had one contract which was a commercial contract. We had one contract which was government funding, and the rest was kind of donations and grants and things like that. But when we lost that commercial contract, it really made us think about how can we become more self-sustainable? How can we ensure our future? How can we put that into our own hands rather than...
And does that effectively mean how do we operate as a business?
That's right, correct. So we came in, we basically applied really stringent, really strong business practices. We diversified significantly. And the really exciting thing that I love is through the fact that our commercial business has grown and has become very commercially focused, the social impact of what we do has become equally, the curves follow each other, which is fantastic, and that's what you want.
Right.
So it's not or, it's and, commercial and social.
Right. So Lisa, your story's quite well known, I guess, that you and your partner had an epiphany, what are we doing with our lives, and decided on Eat My Lunch. But you didn't decide to set up a charity, you decided to set up a business. Tell us about why you made that decision.
Well, it came back to sustainability and also scalability. Like the problem of kids going hungry. Like we estimate there's probably around 25,000 kids in New Zealand a day. To be able to, get to our mission of making sure none of them are going hungry, we also had to be scalable and self-sustaining. And so setting it up as a charity, relying on donations and funding, and as Michelle said, once they stop, your good work has to stop as well. So we came from corporate backgrounds, and so we took kind of like business skills, business models and tools, and tried to apply it to this problem. And so that's how we started with a business, but at the heart of it is our social mission. What we've found is really amazing that even though we are a business, we still get volunteers, So this morning there was at least 25 volunteers in here making lunches for the kids. We've had over 4,000 people come and do that, even though we're a commercial enterprise.
Roster, don't you?
People just sign up online to come and volunteer, and we have a 2-month waiting list at the moment, for volunteering. And I think it goes back to, Alex says it's the mission that comes first. And, people buy why we do what we do, not necessarily the lunches. And people just want to get involved, regardless of whether we're a business or a charity.
So in fact, there are two ways there. You can get involved by buying a lunch, you can get involved by helping. And
The other thing I find quite interesting about Eat My Lunch, if I can talk about your debt program for a minute.
Yeah.
Lisa,
Please do.
if you don't mind me talking about you for a minute, to actually have a social enterprise go out and seek to raise expansion money through debt. That's actually quite a powerful.
Can you explain that?
Well, I'm going to.
Please.
And if I get it wrong, Lisa can correct me. Which is knowing that I suppose they were expanding into Wellington in particular and into Hamilton, a number of lunches that were going on. I watched from the side, in the relatively close quarters, seeking to raise debt capital for the expansion. And so part of the debt capital, if I understand it, remind me how it works, that you're raising money through debt. That was a successful raising, so that's positive. And then the bondholders, because it was selling bonds, had an option. You could either take one level of interest, and that meant instead of there was no free lunches associated with that, or another level, and you sort of got one free lunch or no interest at all, and in which case more lunches were supplied. So there was kind of a nice social edge to the debt raising as well, because
of investing in the company.
You could invest in the company and get expansion capital, because that's the trouble that some charities face, for example. A pure charity say, well, I haven't got an economic return to fund debt or things like that, so it limits me quite a lot. So that was quite an ingenious way for a New Zealand social enterprise to raise capital and expand.
So Nick, are you seeing a lot of this?
No, not actually a lot. So that's actually why Lisa, as she often is, was a bit of a pace at Eat My Lunch, a bit of a pace setter out there, and raising capital. And it can get a little bit tricky because you need debt covenants and all sorts of other things that come with it. So it does require a bit of care. There is quite a lot of this, of course, in the Maori economy, because on the Maori economy side we say, look, we are by our very nature social enterprises, because we take our profits that we earn, so we aim to achieve profits, and we reinvest them back into social outcomes, be that te reo, be that health, be that housing, and education in particular. Often that's with a bit of a charitable arm, and they will raise debt to secure that, but then in their case they tend to have a very land-based asset portfolio that's easier to raise debt against. But again, for Maori and Hapu, it's also a natural tension, because you want to invest your money to earn money, but also there's a tension there, because you're a social enterprise with responsibility to sometimes 60,000 people who could actually take all the money right now. So you've got the intergenerational balance, actually what you earn for the future versus what you pay out now. So that's often a bit of
Which is quite considerable in the iwi economy, isn't it?
It's huge, and they do have to balance that day in, day out. But the nice thing, I suppose, if I think about a model like Eat My Lunch or a model in the iwi environment, you can say the success of Ngāi Tahu in the south, or Tainui around the Waikato, has actually been to provide models that others can follow, and then you actually get a nice bit of competition as between iwi as to how we should be going, and you've got models that are proven, because you can try if you're in the iwi context, try and completely reinvent the wheel, and that can distract you quite a lot. So to have proven models out there in any of these, whether in the iwi context or social business context, that are well understood is quite important, so you don't have to invent anything from scratch. And
you're the head of a corporate law firm. You've got an engagement, particularly through the iwi economy. Chapman Tripp is pretty strong in that area, I guess, but you're not the only ones. Is this way of doing business, you said it was small, but is this way of doing business something that is growing fast, sitting on the side?
Yeah, I actually think, I think we're extremely lucky that we've got a growing Maori economy, because it's at the core of that economy that you give back, and you're actually doing that work and growing that economy for a social purpose. And I think that leads us to being much more tolerant and understanding as to social businesses, in particular. And I think those that do well in a social business environment are those that get it, because you say, look, as a corporate law firm, we could partner with a social business, we could charge them a fee like any other client, but if we actually connect with the purpose, then chances of us growing that practice and actually growing, and being a trusted partner are much higher. So you actually see, I think, a lot of New Zealand businesses, not just us, engaging with social business, engaging with Māori business, and actually trying to get the social purpose as well. And I think that's great because that actually leads to a better societal outcome, because we not only have to think about our own profits, but actually how we work in a sustainable way, whether that's with the environment, with our own people or whatever. So I think it makes us a healthier place.
Alex, what do you think about that? Does social enterprise, where does it sit in the mainstream economy? Is it on the side? Is it modifying the mainstream economy? What's its role?
I think simplistically you'd say it's, it complements the mainstream economy. It's a hybrid. But I think it's more interesting to actually think about where this is going.
Yes.
So, the future's already here, but it's not evenly distributed. So rather than thinking about where it sits in the current economy, I think this is the signal of actually where the economy is going in the future. So I would say if you're looking at sort of some of the drivers to social enterprise, you've got, to a certain degree, the social sector leaning into taking a more enterprising approach, and the commercial sector leaning in to understand that society and the environment matters, not just to them as humans who are generally good people working in organisations, but just for the sustainability of business, in itself. So I see this as a convergence agenda, and what we're sort of seeing with, often these kind of, great stories, but still, finding our way in terms of how visible it is the sharp end of the curve.
Right.
Can I just, we make a lot of play around, well, this is great because we can find a financial model to deliver social, goods. But I think the other thing about the financing piece is not just the sustainability. If you're not dependent on generosity in your funders, you're more likely to be able to innovate into the problem. Because you're not
to innovate.
Yeah, because you're not. I've come from working in the background of NGOs and charities, and you spend too much of your time worrying about what your funders think, not the people that you serve. And the other thing is there's an empowerment agenda here, and I think this is really relevant to the Māori economy and also to community enterprises across the country, in terms of rather than being the recipients of services and generosity, it's about ownership of assets, it's about design and delivery of their own services, and communities actually taking development, sort of into their own hands. So sustainability, but also innovation and empowerment.
So how do those things apply to you, would you say? That, not having to answer to your funders in the same way, that must make life easier?
Yes,
I guess.
entirely. In fact, we even see our funders, we now see government as an example, as a keystone customer rather than as a funder. We're delivering a service, and that changes the relationship, which is fantastic. And I think what Alex is saying is absolutely right. By no longer being reliant or dependable on one income stream, through good business practice, through diversification, it drives innovation. It has literally changed our whole landscape. The future of Kilmarnock is so exciting now, because it's sustainable, it's replicable, it's scalable. All those things that it wasn't before.
And are you scaling?
Yes, in fact,
That's the big plan?
Well, we've already scaled to some degree. I don't know if you're aware, but we're at the end of a 3-year project where we've just built a brand new, bespokely designed new building. It's called Basecamp. So we've relocated from our old site, which we were on for 40 years, which had kind of grown iteratively, to a brand new design, purpose-built site, and the opportunities therefore are huge for us now. So the next challenge for us is, what does growth look like beyond Basecamp? Is it a model where we start operating in other cities? Is it bigger in Christchurch? Is it diversifying further into the education space?
Because are there corresponding organisations to yours in other cities as social enterprises, or are they charities?
A real mixture.
It's
the
a real
spectrum
mix.
is huge, So some of them, there are probably 4 or 5 examples of organisations who are similar to us who are trying to take that similar path at different stages of that journey.
Right. Okay. And the point that Alex raised before about empowering communities, is that an issue for you? Are you working in a community that can be empowered, or how can it be empowered?
Yeah, so I would say that if we go back to, interestingly, if we go back to our charity model that we were operating in about 6 years ago, we did it, our operation was entirely independent of the community. Yet somehow through transitioning to a social enterprise model, we're doing this with the community. So it's been amazing how that transition has allowed us to get the community really in.
And you're talking about families, are you?
Every aspect of the community, every single stakeholder in the community. Whether it's families, whether it's schools, whether it's local businesses, the philanthropic sector. It's been quite amazing, the change. Whether we were operating very much in a silo before, now we're doing so amongst a community that is very, very willing to get involved, which is fantastic.
Lisa, you're expanding to take over the world, really? Is that where it's going to go?
Just New Zealand at the moment.
Just New Zealand at the moment. I love this, yeah. So, is that easy to do?
No, I think if you look at us purely like a startup, 2 years in, it's always really difficult, and funding and having enough capital for expansion, getting staff. So we go through all the same pains as a growing business. But I think, as Michelle says, when you've got this big social mission, people are incredibly generous, and they do come on board. A lot of our suppliers give us favourable costs on things that we buy. We get a lot of help that I think if we were purely a business, we wouldn't get.
So if you're getting favourable costs, those sorts of things, that's great for you, but it also suggests that it's not necessarily a model you could roll out right through the economy, because somebody has to pay somewhere. Would that be fair?
We pay. We have 99% of our relationships with our suppliers are commercial. But because people love what we do, they do come on board, and they're a lot more generous with our relationship. Yeah.
So this is one of the big questions, I think, and it really does interest me, the extent to which social enterprise either reinforces or modifies the mainstream economy. Is capitalism stronger or weaker or better or worse, or what is it? What's happening on a macro level?
I think it's absolutely stronger, and I think it's the expectation, and it's not just in New Zealand. So if I was thinking, one of the things that really, really surprised me, I was lucky enough to go to Colorado on a leadership course with 11 people in the room from all around the globe. One was it's going to sound like a bad joke actually. One was an admiral, one was a general. There was a guy that ran a power company in Jamaica. And
is there a punchline?
The punchline is actually they were really interested in what we were doing in New Zealand around the Maori economy and the social side, and then they equated it to the social enterprise back home. So when you look at it sort of overseas, you can see large corporates actually starting to, we were just talking about before, Alex, you start to lean in, and I think as they lean in and social enterprise leans in, you actually will get a convergence. In a funny kind of way, that has to be the idea of the contract with the state. The state actually, and the community as a whole, we actually give back to our community because that's the most important thing. So businesses that actually don't connect and look after their environment and their people and the community around them actually will be, if we get the state where that's the exception as opposed to the rule, I think that's quite a powerful place to be. And while overseas are trending that way, I think because the rise of the because we actually have got such a strong sort of Maori base around there, you're 16% of the population, large volumes of wealth in our economy of whatever it is, they're now talking about $50 billion. We've got a strong base that leans that way, as well as social enterprise in its own right, as well as charities that move that way as well. So New Zealand's actually in a good, and we're a small, transparent country with very low levels of corruption. So we're actually a good place to be a bit of a petri dish for the social enterprise.
So if to stay on that big question, if there are a few things that are now widely accepted, and one of them is probably that we are in a stage of history around the world where there is an economic system, and it is capitalism, and it's enlightened or less depending on where you are, but the competition to overthrow it doesn't exist anymore in the way that it did during the Cold War. Another one is that we have climate change rushing at us. And then the third one is that there is an enormous will in society that where we have a developed economy with resources, we want to make sure that there is a degree of fairness and opportunity that is shared out. And everybody's nodding, and I think that those things seem to me to be kind of givens now. That's who we are. Is social enterprise in the forefront of that? Is it rushing along behind? Is it going to change anybody? Is it going to change the way in which the economy goes around?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going to be really hard-nosed, you could look at this through a lens of risk. So the whole idea that we know we are on a ball of rock in the middle of nowhere, and there are planetary systems that are very benign, but if we influence them or tip them over, life gets a lot harder for everyone. So in the sense of, if you've got more business activity which isn't externalizing costs into the environment, you're managing that risk. So again, sort of social enterprise is social and environmental enterprise, right? It's about not externalizing costs, it's about externalizing benefits. The same thing you could say from a social point of view. I mean, we're living in a time of extreme inequality. And I think I wouldn't want to be trite around why we're starting to see all these political risks arise, but you would have to say that inequality is, somewhere, in that mix. And having organisations which are thinking about the provision of, creating the conditions for more people to thrive, thinking about actually equality as a major driver of managing social risk. These things are important. So I think with social enterprise, again, what it represents is an approach to creating value, which is not externalizing cost and is redistributing more value for more people. So in that economic argument, that's the way I would see social enterprise. And of course, in practice, you still want innovation, you want diversity, you want it to be sort of a chaotic, messy, competitive, world. And so that's in the practice of it. But I think from a strategic point of view, that's what we're seeing social enterprise knocking on the door.
Others agree with that?
I take a bit of comfort that it evolves, and the consumers, rather than consumerism being a negative, actually demands it. And so that's where you will get an interface with Kilmarnock, you get an interface with Eat My Lunch, because you can say, look, compared to other products or options, even an individual consumer or business might have to say, I prefer to interface with a social enterprise because I'm getting a social good as well, and it allows me to tell a story when I go back home, or I tell my own customers. And actually, increasingly, for a law firm of our size, you actually are getting our clients saying, well, how do you look after the food chain? So they're demanding our story of us, and so we've got to be mindful of that. And actually, even if we weren't, we didn't do it because we wanted to, we actually got to do it because you've got to. And so that actually becomes an important part of the landscape. So that's where you get quite a powerful dynamic forward place.
So we have a lot of big corporates, that are partnering with us now, and
and what does that mean? You're doing their lunches?
So they've made us a preferred internal caterer supplier. So for example, the Air New Zealands of the world, and in a year they have given 20,000 lunches as an organisation, and that's something they can go back, to their staff, to their board, and to their consumers and customers and say, this is what we're doing. Doesn't cost them any more. In fact, our lunch is probably cheaper than what they can get from other caterers, but there's a story behind that, and they're actually doing good at the same time.
Right.
So, and there's more and more every week. We're signing up a new customer, to be their preferred supplier of that.
Right.
I was going to say, again, if you wanted to be hard-nosed about it, it's not just about doing something which is nice and good. It's about getting more value. So I was going to have to buy my lunch anyway, so why wouldn't I want to actually create an opportunity for someone else to have one? There's an Aussie social enterprise called Who Gives a Crap? Toilet paper, right? And so they redivert some of their profits into sanitation projects in developing countries. Now you think, like, why wouldn't our Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade buy all their toilet roll from Who Gives a Crap? Because it's basically subsidising or supplementing our development.
And the particular beauty of that project is that what the purpose of it is actually transformative, isn't it? It's sanitation projects change people's lives, make everything else possible when they have clean water and can rely.
So there's this myth that we've had trade-offs. Like commercials over here and the social environment's there. We have to. But I think a lot about this movement is saying, actually, this is about added value. Be it about investment, getting my return and also getting other value, be it about procurement or purchasing decisions, or be it just in the way that we are as organisations.
So does this mean that consumerism is the new politics? Consumerism and politics used to be posited as opposites, that you either consume or you get out there and change the world. But actually, the way in which you consume, the choices you make as a consumer have political ramifications, and they don't have to be bad political ramifications, obviously. So, is that what's happening here?
Well, I'd put it another way. If you think about where you have agency in your life, you can influence how you are to people.
Yes.
You can influence where you work. You can influence, what's said in society, and you can influence things you buy. So absolutely, I wouldn't say this replaces, and I think that would be kind of a lazy thing, to think. We still have to be active members of civil society, but absolutely, we can also, have a change in influence of where we spend our dollars.
Others.
Yeah, just to support that, it's interesting. I feel that a lot of our customers who engage with us do so because they've realised that in order for them to retain their really good employees, the new generation, they actually have to do things like engaging with social enterprise because they demand it.
Right.
So yes, I'd support that entirely. Yeah. And just going back to the previous point, it's very interesting. One of our biggest quests that we're enjoying, almost proving to the business community, is that by outsourcing with Kilmarnock, you're absolutely not jeopardising any quality or any of the things that you would expect from a purely commercial organisation. In fact, I would say that in many cases, social enterprises do it better because we've had to be innovative. We've had to try really hard to get to where we've got to. So it definitely is a value add rather than.
So I can imagine a world where your operation and your customers for it, and your operation and your customers will tell a whole lot of other companies and corporates, actually, we need to keep up.
Yeah.
We need to develop a more ethical approach to what we do because consumers are demanding it.
That's right.
Do you see that happening?
Yeah, what I was thinking was that there was not only the customer side, but think of professional services. Our biggest need, because it's one thing to service our clients, but the other market we stand is not the client market, but the recruitment market. And when you're looking at millennials, so sort of young lawyers out of law school, there is an expectation there that actually I want to work in a place that will further my career. I'll learn fantastic skills, but actually that is doing good as well. So I want to earn a living. I want to increase my skills, but I want to work in a place that makes me feel good. And so that also fits into the social enterprise side of things as well. And that's also why you see it's not only social enterprise, but the rise of the CSR. Programs amongst most professional services as well, and then of course you end up on a competition basis because the accountants compete with the lawyers compete with each other for doing the greatest good. But that's actually not a bad place to be either, because that's actually everybody is focused on lifting the community and social environment as one. So that's a good place to be.
I mean, we recently advertised for a role. And I think we had like 60, 70 applicants in a few days. And so it speaks to, I think the power of what we do. And a lot of them were in corporate
Right.
companies saying, I actually just want to get out of that and do something good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Entirely.
Because of course part of the aim must be eventually that corporates themselves are not, that there aren't so many people who want to escape corporate life because corporate life gets better, surely.
Exactly.
Yeah?
Convergence.
And I think, well, it's just thinking that because you often hear people complain from my generation in particular, on me, so complaining about millennials and they're all in it for themselves, but actually that's not true at all. That's right. They want to see a purpose that is bigger than themselves. They want to engage with it, and so the corporates that are going to attract the best talent, maintain relationships with clients as well, they have to get there. Just have to get their head around it. And most people, it's much easier to embrace things, social enterprise, because you want to, as a law firm, as an accounting firm, as a bank, as whatever you want to be, because you want to, and it's a positive engagement. Because if you feel you have to, you give off that, you give off that vibe.
Absolutely.
One of the difficulties of working in the area of politics and consumerism and private enterprise and all the rest of it is that every now and then a situation can become fraught with political risk. And Lisa, I wonder if you could talk a little about the letter you wrote to MPs recently and just what happened there.
Yeah, so the Tuesdays that's just gone, we hit our 500,000 lunch that we've given to kids. And we took the opportunity, we wrote an open letter to all members of Parliament to kind of put their money where their mouth is, and we've demonstrated that there obviously is a problem.
And that phrase means something particularly to you, doesn't it?
Yeah. And that we asked all the members of Parliament to actually sign up to buy and eat my lunch. And I think, we, as an organisation, we have stayed away from politics. We don't get involved, but this was kind of just a bit of a challenge to the people who can actually make a difference. To kind of say, well, let's do something.
But of course, when you go to Parliament, when you go to MPs, you are getting involved. It is politics.
Yes, it is.
and you made a disparaging reference to the process of
legislation. I think we chose some words unwisely, and we referred to the fact that they didn't even have to pass any bills or any pesky bills or lift a fork. That all they had to do was order a lunch. And obviously, for us, this isn't. We weren't saying that's. We believe, bills and policies and legislation are essential to solving the problem. It was a light-hearted note to them to just say, but this is one thing you can do as an individual.
So what do you take out of that? What's the lesson there for a social enterprise?
Yeah, I think, for us, Eat My Lunch is all about doing good. And, and it's about staying true to our values. And so, we're very much, it's about inclusiveness, getting the whole community on board. And I think the lesson for us there was the way that it was messaged in the letter wasn't true to kind of who we were.
Right.
And I think when you are doing something good, there is a lot of scrutiny. And, transparency is absolute key. We have to be, absolutely honest and genuine about what we do. And I think there's a very fine line between that and, kind of we were trying to be a little bit cheeky and challenging, and we kind of overstepped that a bit.
So, because presumably the part of the messaging always has to be that what you're doing is complementary to. I mean, you're not solving poverty. You're
absolutely
giving out
not.
lunches.
I mean, but
there are people trying to solve poverty, and you don't want. You're not intending to step in their way.
No.
Yes.
And I think we have always. I mean, Eat My Lunch came about because I saw on TV there were kids going hungry, and I just wanted to make sure they were getting fed while they're at school so they could learn. That's kind of pretty much as far as it goes. We're not about solving the root causes of poverty or anything like that. So, we're just a very small part of that puzzle.
Alex, do you comment on that?
Well, I mean, the first thing I'd say is, no one organisation is going to solve a systemic problem.
No.
But if you have a whole kind of, movement of organisations, taking off, small parts of the system, working together collaboratively in different places from different cultural backgrounds with different passions and, different networks, then you will start to shift the dial. So, I take Lisa's point. I think, there's always that risk that when you stick your neck out, the axe might come down on it a little bit. So I think there's some courage needed in terms of not just doing the work and the hours and the stress and the strain that goes into doing that, but also leading a story, if you like, and then being at the beginning of something that people are still trying to get their heads around and understand better.
And I guess that's when I asked before whether consumerism was the new politics. I mean, the upside of that is consumers can change the economy because they can buy things that are produced ethically. And the downside can be that if it's only what I buy as opposed to what I say to my MP to get them to change the law, then less progressive laws get enacted.
I tend to. We seem to have come very divided about this idea of kind of capitalism and the economy. Like in recent years. I tend to think back. If you look at trade is the primary human technology. It enabled us to survive, by actually exchanging resources when, in the ice ages. So it's always been a thing which has actually defined us. It's just, I think, more recent years, it's become, dysfunctional. But trade is still our primary means of actually exchanging value and actually evolving and innovating. So I think, yes, consumerism or trade or commerce is something that, is our tool. We can use it how we want, but we're also a civic society, and so I don't think you can rely on just the economic part. We also have to be political, We also, live in communities, and those things all have to go hand in hand.
And if trade is at the heart of who we are as a community, that's the real essence of what's good about what you do, isn't it? That you involve people in the trading economy
Absolutely.
who a generation or two ago would have been thought not able to be part of.
Entirely. That's what we demonstrate, not only to the individuals but to society, that everyone that comes through the doors of Kilmarnock absolutely should be participating in a trading economy. I mean, 1 in 5, I think, New Zealanders are said to have a disability, and in a poll of what people with intellectual disabilities want from life, they wanted the same as the rest of us. They wanted to work.
Yeah.
They just didn't have the options to work.
And the strength of what you do is that in a trading economy, you offer people the opportunity to make an ethical purchasing decision that will not so much empower people, but will actually just feed a need, if I can use the pun.
Yes.
And that in itself is so important. Yeah?
Yeah.
And
I quite like the thought, if I sort of pick up on that if I think back to the New Zealand of my childhood, where the fact that, we had a treaty gravy train, and a lot of what Maori were doing was viewed negatively by a large part of the population. But actually, as they've grown and made a success of their social enterprises, you might not have you might not have political self-determination, but you will have economic self-determination, and they look after not only their own people, but because they are successful in a trading economy and they've got a social purpose, that gives them political clout at a whole bunch of levels. And I think if you then look through to social enterprises generally, the fact that actually Eat My Lunch actually will make a political statement, and they've been successful in business. Same with Kilmarnock as well. That actually resonates more powerfully because they have the economic strength to move from an economic base to do it. So I think the odd charities, pure charities, struggle to make political comments because of the laws of charities, but social enterprises can actually say, look, the very fact you need 500,000 free lunches actually points to things aren't quite perfect there.
Yeah.
The very fact that actually iwi can say, look, actually we're profitable, we've grown our asset base, we're delivering a whole bunch of social services, but we can't match demand either. It actually points to the fact that things are wrong in other parts as well. So it actually adds weight to the commentary.
So we've spoken, I suppose, a lot about what happens on the outside of a social enterprise, but also it's important what happens on the inside. In terms of what are these like as places to work? To what degree actually are they providing respect and dignity? And the point about empowerment, in a lot of cases, we haven't talked about cooperatives, but particularly in Spain and Italy, if you talk about social enterprise, you're talking a lot about mutuals and cooperatives. And this is where the people of a community actually own the thing. Yeah. So it changes the relationship between labour and capital. Now I don't, so I'm getting that, but there's something quite powerful in that, in terms of actually having not just working for something, but having an ownership of the thing that you work in, and that actually being committed to the community that you live in.
Right.
So there's a lot here, I think.
There's one more point I wanted to ask about, and Alex, is something that you said recently. A culture shift has to happen so we can consider the tensions in a way that's not simply ideological. And you went on to say, but we need some quality assurances that a self-declared mission-first business is what it says it is. Yeah. In other words, transparency. We can see that this company that set itself up to do good in the world actually is doing good in the world, and we can have confidence in it. And we haven't really talked about that transparency side, but you're saying there that's so critical to because private companies, of course, don't have to be transparent normally.
No, and we don't expect them to be. Right. And that was part of my point. If a mainstream company does some good on the side, we tend to think quite well of them. But we've seen actually a lot of challenge around entrepreneurs that say, I'm in it for the mission, but I'm not taking a charitable legal form, so therefore we can make profit.
Yeah.
And I think that's still something that we're working our way through. So I think I think there is that cultural shift, and we've kind of got to get over the idea that the only way that you can actually develop good is by having something which is completely locked down. Right. Because, not least because if you want to scale, if you can't sell ownership, you can only take on debt, and that's a lousy growth instrument. I know it worked for you, but on the whole, you need risk capital. But more than that, it's just like, what is important here? The importance is the integrity of the organisation and the impact it's creating. So as long as organisations are accountable in terms of demonstrating or evidencing the change they're making, so we can see that they're not just saying this is what we're about, but this is actually what we're achieving, and also that we can see that it's in their governance and their business model and their investment strategies. So there's other ways to manage that risk rather than just saying let's lock it down with a kind of charitable trust.
How do you address that?
Well, I think, we're probably one of the most transparent, I'd say, manufacturing businesses. That the fact we allow 4,000 people to walk through and see how we make the lunches and be part of that. There aren't many other businesses that do that. And I think that gives a lot of transparency, and we've actually got people coming and making the lunches and delivering them to the kids.
Right.
So they see it from, kind of the whole process from start to finish. There's obviously things like measuring the impact that we have. I mean, we get a lot of feedback from the schools, but one of our next challenges and objectives is around how do we actually measure that in a measurable way of going, this is actually what we are doing for those kids. But yeah, anyone can walk in here, as you guys did this morning, and see what we actually do.
Michelle, transparency?
Oh gosh, we would be the most visited manufacturing plant, I think.
Apart from the ice cream factory, I bet.
That's right. Yeah, so we have a mixture of externally audited, for example, ISO accreditation as an example of a food safety program. So those are externally audited systems. We also invite the community in on regular tours, for example. So I think in any year, probably 2,000 or 3,000 people walk through the doors of Kilmarnock and engage with employees, so parents, caregivers as well, and also our customers. A lot of our customers, Air New Zealand, Fonterra, Foodstuffs, they all audit us as a part of the relationship.
Right.
So we have to be entirely transparent. Something that we're also working on is the whole impact measurement side of things. I'm a bit of a closet Excel geek, and I've created a system that works for us now, but that's something we want to really ramp up in terms of being able to talk to, actually, this is the impact of what we're doing. It's not just what we think it is, this is genuine and tangible.
Anybody want to say 10 years' time we're going to be here? Who's got a vision?
Well, in 10 years' time, I actually hope that Kilmarnock doesn't need to exist in the form it exists today. That would be my statement to the ground. So if we could exist more as a training academy and somebody who helps employers become disability confident employers, rather than as an employer, I would be very happy, because that means that the business community has realised and woken up to the fact that diversity as a workforce is absolutely critical.
Terrific.
I love the story in Scotland now. If you're 12 or 13, you learn about business through the medium of social enterprise. Wow. So you're learning all skills around entrepreneurship and commerce, but through a lens of care. And so you kind of think that if you start to build that kind of practice into our learning systems, what does that mean in terms of the next generation of entrepreneurs? So, there's this old cliche, a bit like, sort of putting yourself out of business, but like taking the word social away from enterprise, because, that's just the way it's done.
Does that resonate for the iwi economies?
I think it does. I think if we kind of think where iwi will naturally go, is they will funnel their funding back into education and health. Doesn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me. Within 10 years, you would see out of probably frustrated with the government system, an iwi-run school, and they will feed the kids. They will have, particularly up north, we've got a number of, even things like school sores, which are very hard to eradicate, but they'll run a school. They'll have nurses available, sort of thing that Dr. Lance O'Sullivan has been talking about for a while. And so I think you'll see an increase in social business moving into almost like what we'll almost consider a governmental space at the moment, and expecting that to continue. You'll probably see a lot more interface between business, and so the continuing of that leaning in, as Alex called it, I think will continue, and I think will be stronger for it. I expect sort of an exponential increase, because there is a large rump of so it's probably a terrible way to express it, a large volume probably of treaty settlements still to come, and once those are complete, particularly because in some of them the hardest ones to sort of not have been in the poorest areas, and once they go through, the impact of those on the social enterprises around them and their expectation of businesses they see alongside. Because actually we saw another example was we saw 13 iwi come together, combine their fishing quota, And they said, look, if you want a fishing quota, you're going to have to tender for it. And one of the requirements of the tender were very close to social, so with a whole bunch of social outcomes. How you maintain fish quota, how you educate your own people, how you choose to educate our people, and a whole bunch. So we will just see the prevalence of that sort of filtering through the whole economy. So it will continue to rise. And expect more of us in the sort of more pure corporate sphere. And I think that's a good thing. And I think that'll be particularly a good thing for New Zealand because of our small size and strong base there. We'll be stronger, I think, than a lot of other countries. Because you probably, if I think I've also practiced law in Australia, it's not quite as prevalent over there because there isn't such a strong. They've got some fantastic social enterprises, and those that will touch base with the Aboriginal communities get exposed to it. But in New Zealand, because of the strong Maori economy, strong Maori base, the exposure to social enterprise ideas is just much higher.
And for Eat My Lunch, the buy one, give one model, just right through the economy in every sector, I guess, is the idea.
Maybe.
Because it doesn't have to be just food, does it?
No,
and it,
absolutely
in fact, didn't
not.
start with just food. So it's,
Yeah, I think, the concept and the kind of big idea can be applied to anything.
yeah. Okay. So, Nick Wells, Michelle Sharp, Lisa King, and Alex Hannant, thank you all so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.